The porcelain cup shattered against the marble floor of the hospital corridor, sending coffee splashing across Marcus Sterling's $1,000 Italian shoes. He stared down at the mess, his jaw clenched so tight his teeth ached. The woman who'd bumped into him, some nobody in scrubs that had seen better days, was already on her knees, frantically trying to gather the pieces with her bare hands. "I'm so sorry," she whispered, her voice barely audible above the constant hum of hospital machinery. A drop of blood appeared on her finger where a shard had cut her. "I'll pay for it, I promise. I can. Don't." Marcus's voice cut through her stammering like a blade. He looked down at her with the same expression he might reserve for something unpleasant he'd stepped in. "Just don't touch anything else." "Doctor." Elena Vasquez looked up at him then, her dark eyes flashing with something that might have been anger if she hadn't immediately suppressed it. She was probably late 20s, Marcus noted absently, with the kind of tired face that spoke of many double shifts and not enough sleep. Her black hair was pulled back in a messy bun, and there were dark circles under her eyes that no amount of makeup could hide. Not that she was wearing any makeup, he realized. Everything about her screamed poor, from her worn sneakers to the way she kept glancing nervously at the broken cup as if she were calculating how many meals it would cost her. "I said I'd pay for it," she repeated, standing up slowly. There was dignity in the way she held herself, Marcus had to admit, even. As she bled onto his expensive marble, Marcus almost laughed. "Almost. Do you have any idea what that cup cost?" She shook her head, still clutching the bloody shards. "More than you make in a month, I'd wager." He pulled out his phone, not even looking at her now. "Hospital security?" "Yes, there's been an incident. On the cardiac wing. Some staff member has made a mess that needs cleaning up." Elena's face went white. She knew what a call to security meant for someone like her, someone who cleaned bedpans and mopped floors, while the real doctors made life and death decisions. Someone whose employment could be terminated with a single complaint from a man who clearly had the power to make her disappear from this place forever. "Please," she said, and Marcus hated how small her voice sounded. It reminded him of his daughter Sophia's voice when she was scared, back when she still talked to him. Back before the divorce, before the diagnosis, before everything fell apart. "I have a daughter. I need this job." Something flickered across Marcus's face, so quickly Elena almost missed it. But then his expression hardened again, and she knew. She was looking at a man who had built walls so high and thick that nothing could get through them. "You should have thought of that before you decided to be clumsy in front of people who matter." The words hit Elena like a physical blow. She'd dealt with entitled rich people before. The hospital was full of them, but there was something particularly cruel about the way this man spoke, as if her very existence was an offense against his perfectly ordered world. Security arrived before she could respond. 2 uniformed guards who took one look at Marcus's expensive suit and Elena's janitor's uniform and immediately knew whose side they were on. But as they moved toward Elena, Marcus held up a hand. "Actually," he said, his voice thoughtful now, calculating, "I think we can handle this privately, Ms. Vasquez," Elena said quietly. Elena Vasquez. Ms. Vasquez was just explaining how she planned to make this right. His smile was sharp as broken glass. "Weren't you?" Elena nodded, not trusting her voice. She would figure out how to pay for whatever ridiculously expensive cup she'd broken. She'd sell plasma again, maybe pick up weekend shifts at the diner downtown. Somehow she'd make it work. She always did. Marcus Sterling watched her nod and felt something that might have been satisfaction if it weren't so hollow. This was how the world worked, after all. People like him gave orders, and people like her followed them. It was simple, clean, uncomplicated. Unlike everything else in his life, he was still thinking about the woman's frightened eyes when he walked into room 314 and saw his daughter connected to more machines than any 7-year-old should ever have to see. Sophia's face lit up when she saw him, the same smile that had melted his heart since the day she was born. But she looked so small against the white hospital sheets. "Daddy," she said, reaching for him with arms that seemed too thin, too fragile. "Did you bring the book?" Marcus felt his chest tighten. "Which book, sweetheart?" "The one about the princess who saves the dragon," Sophia said seriously. "I told you yesterday, remember?" Marcus didn't remember. He'd been in 3 different meetings yesterday, had closed a deal worth more money than most people saw in a lifetime, had dinner with investors who hung on his every word. But he couldn't remember his sick daughter asking him for a book. "I'll bring it tomorrow," he promised, kissing her forehead. She felt warm, too warm. "How are you feeling today?" "Better," Sophia lied, the same way she'd been lying for weeks. Now at 7 years old, she'd already learned that telling the truth about how much everything hurt just made the grown-ups look sad and scared. Dr. Martinez chose that moment to knock on the door, her expression carefully professional. Marcus had been dealing with doctors for months now, and he'd learned to read their faces. Dr. Martinez's face said the same thing all the others had said, just in different words. "Mr. Sterling, could I speak with you privately for a moment?" Marcus looked at Sophia, who was already reaching for her tablet, pretending not to notice the serious tone in the doctor's voice. He followed Dr. Martinez into the hallway, steeling himself for whatever new piece of bad news she was about to deliver. "We've been over the donor list again," Dr. Martinez said without preamble. "I'm sorry, but with Sophia's blood type and tissue compatibility requirements, we're looking at a very long wait. Years, possibly. Years?" Marcus felt something cold settle in his stomach. "She doesn't have years." "I know." Dr. Martinez's voice was gentle but firm. "Which is why I want to talk to you about living donor options. Family members, close friends, I already told you. I'm not compatible. Neither is my ex-wife." Marcus's hands clenched into fists. "What about buying one?" "There has to be someone willing to, Mr. Sterling. That's illegal. And dangerous. Black market organs. I don't care about illegal things." The words came out louder than Marcus intended, echoing off the hospital walls. A few nurses looked in their direction, and he forced himself to lower his voice. "I'll pay anything. Do anything. She's 7 years old." Dr. Martinez studied his face for a long moment. "There is one other option. We could put out a broader call for altruistic donors. People who might be willing to donate to save a child's life, even without knowing the family personally. It's rare, but it does happen." Marcus wanted to laugh at the absurdity of it. Strangers donating organs out of the goodness of their hearts. People didn't work that way. Everyone had an angle. Everyone wanted something. In his world, altruism was just another word for a con game you hadn't figured out yet. But he was desperate enough to try anything. "Do it," he said. "Put out the call." As Dr. Martinez walked away, Marcus leaned against the wall and closed his eyes. Somewhere in this hospital, Elena Vasquez was probably still cleaning up the mess he'd made her create, still figuring out how to pay for a cup that cost more than her weekly salary. The irony wasn't lost on him. He had more money than he could spend in several lifetimes, but he couldn't buy the one thing his daughter needed to live. What do you think will happen next? Share your predictions in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more thrilling stories. Elena's hands were shaking as she filled out the donor screening forms 3 days later. She'd seen the notice on the hospital bulletin board, a desperate plea for kidney donors to save a child's life. The details were minimal. 7-year-old girl, rare blood type, critical condition. No names, no photos, just a phone number and the word urgent printed in red letters. She'd walked past that notice 17 times during her shift, each time telling herself she was being ridiculous. She was a single mother working 2 jobs just to keep food on the table. She couldn't afford to take time off for surgery, couldn't risk complications, Couldn't leave her own daughter Maya without a mother. But every time she'd tried to forget about it, she'd thought about some other mother sitting in a hospital room, watching her child slip away while doctors delivered statistics about donor shortages and waiting lists. Name? The nurse behind the desk looked tired, like she'd processed 100 of these forms today. Elena Vasquez. Have you ever been a donor before? No, but I've donated blood. Plasma too, when double quotes Elena trailed off. When they needed grocery money, when Maya had needed new school clothes, when the rent was due and Elena's paycheck was still 3 days away. The nurse didn't need to hear about any of that. The screening process was more extensive than Elena had expected. Blood draws, questionnaire about her medical history, psychological evaluations to ensure she understood the risks and wasn't being coerced. Each appointment meant time away from work, which meant less money, which meant Maya eating cereal for dinner again while Elena smiled and pretended it was a special treat. "Why are you doing this?" Dr. Patel, the transplant coordinator, asked during Elena's final evaluation. "I have to ask, because your financial situation suggests this decision might be difficult for you to follow through with." Elena had been expecting this question, but it still caught her off guard. How could she explain that sometimes you had to do something good just because it was good? That sometimes the right choice was the one that made no logical sense at all? "I have a daughter," she said finally. "She's 8. If she needed a kidney, I'd hope someone would step up for her, even if they didn't know us." Dr. Patel made a note in Elena's file. "And you understand the risks? The recovery time? The potential complications?" Elena nodded. She'd read everything they'd given her, had researched online until her eyes burned from staring at medical websites. She knew she could die on the operating table. She knew the recovery would be brutal. She knew she'd miss weeks of work with no guarantee her jobs would still be there when she got back. She also knew that somewhere in this hospital, a 7-year-old girl was dying. "When can we do it?" she asked. Meanwhile, Marcus was having the worst week of his professional life, which was saying something considering his personal life had been a disaster for months. The Hartman merger, the deal that was supposed to cement his company's dominance in the biotech sector, was falling apart because of some accounting irregularities that his team should have caught weeks ago. How the hell did we miss this? He barked at his senior partner, James Crawford, who was standing in front of Marcus's desk, looking like he'd rather be anywhere else in the world. "The forensic accountants found it buried in subsidiary reports," James said, loosening his tie. "Hartman's been cooking their books for at least 2 years. If we'd gone through with the merger, we'd have been liable for their fraud." Marcus threw his pen across the room, where it clattered against the floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked downtown Seattle. $30 million in due diligence, and this is what we get? An accounting department that can't catch basic fraud? "Marcus, we dodged a bullet here. If this had come out after, don't." Marcus held up a hand. "Just don't. Find me another deal, something clean, something that won't blow up in our faces." James hesitated at the door. "How's Sophia?" The question hit Marcus like a punch to the gut. He'd been so focused on work on deals and mergers and profit margins that he'd almost forgotten why work had become his refuge in the first place. Almost forgotten that his daughter was lying in a hospital bed, waiting for a miracle that might never come. "She's..." Marcus started, then stopped. "She's dying," he wanted to say. "She's dying and I can't fix it, and I'm losing my mind." But that wasn't the kind of thing Marcus Sterling said out loud, not even to his oldest friend. "She's holding on," he said instead. That evening, Marcus sat in Sophia's hospital room while she slept, her small hand clasped in his much larger one. The machines around her bed beeped and hummed, tracking every breath, every heartbeat, every moment of the life that was slowly slipping away from her. He'd brought the book. She'd asked for one about the princess who saves the dragon. but she'd been too tired to listen to more than a few pages before falling asleep. The book lay open on his lap now, forgotten, while he watched his daughter's chest rise and fall with mechanical precision. "Mr. Sterling?" Marcus looked up to see Dr. Martinez standing in the doorway, her expression unreadable. "We have news," she said quietly, "about the donor search." Marcus felt his heart stop. "And we found a match." For a moment, Marcus couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. Couldn't do anything but stare at Dr. Martinez's face and try to process what she'd just sighed. "A match," he repeated. "You're sure?" "Perfect tissue compatibility. Same blood type. The donor is healthy, motivated, and ready to proceed as soon as possible." Dr. Martinez smiled, the first genuine smile Marcus had seen from her in months. "We can schedule the surgery for next week." Marcus felt something break open in his chest, something he'd been holding closed for so long he'd forgotten it was there. Relief flooded through him, so intense it was almost painful. "Who is it?" he asked. "The donor. I want to thank them." Dr. Martinez hesitated. "Hospital policy is to maintain anonymity unless both parties specifically request contact. The donor has indicated they prefer to remain anonymous for now." Marcus nodded, though every instinct he had was screaming at him to find this person, to offer them anything they wanted, to ensure they understood how grateful he was. Someone out there, some stranger, was literally giving his daughter a chance at life. "Can you at least tell me, is it a man or woman?" "Woman," Dr. Martinez said. "That's all I can share right now." After Dr. Martinez left, Marcus sat in the dark hospital room and tried to imagine the woman who was about to save his daughter's life. What kind of person donated a kidney to a stranger? What motivated someone to undergo major surgery for a child they'd never met? In Marcus's world, everyone had an angle. Everyone wanted something. But what could this woman possibly want from him that she couldn't just ask for directly? Elena was thinking the same thing as she lay in her own bed that night, staring at the ceiling and trying not to think about the surgery scheduled for the following Tuesday. Maya was asleep beside her. They shared the bed in their tiny studio apartment, and had been sharing it since Maya outgrew her crib and Elena couldn't afford a bigger place. She'd told Maya the truth, or at least part of it, that she was going to have an operation to help a little girl who was very sick, that she'd be in the hospital for a few days, but Mrs. Chun from next door would take care of everything while Elena was gone. What she hadn't told Maya was that she was terrified, that she'd never had surgery before, never been put under anesthesia, never faced the possibility that she might not wake up. She hadn't told Maya that she'd written a letter just in case explaining where Maya should go and what Elena wanted for her if something went wrong. The letter was hidden in the bottom of Elena's jewelry box, underneath the few pieces of cheap jewelry she'd managed to keep when she'd pawned everything else of value. Right next to Maya's birth certificate and Elena's own mother's wedding ring, the only thing of her mother's she had left. Elena closed her eyes and tried to imagine the little girl who would receive her kidney. 7 years old, the forms had said. The same age Maya had been when Elena's own mother died, leaving Elena completely alone in the world except for her daughter. She wondered if the little girl was scared, if she understood what was happening to her, if she had nightmares about hospitals and machines and the smell of disinfectant that seemed to cling to everything in places like this. Elena hoped the girl had a good father, a father who read her stories and tucked her in at night and made her feel safe even when everything else was falling apart. She hoped the girl would grow up knowing how much she was loved, how many people had fought to keep her alive. The irony wasn't lost on Elena that she was about to give part of herself to save a child whose father could probably buy and sell Elena's entire life without noticing the expense. But that didn't matter. A child was a child, whether she lived in a penthouse or a studio apartment, whether her father wore $1,000 suits or secondhand clothes. Some things were more important than money. Some things were worth everything. The surgery was scheduled for 6 a.m. on Tuesday morning. Elena arrived at the hospital at 4:30, her hands shaking as she signed the final consent forms. Maya was still asleep at Mrs. Chun's apartment, blissfully unaware that her mother was about to undergo a procedure that could change everything. Dr. Patel reviewed the risks one final time, speaking in the calm, measured tones that doctors used when they wanted to appear reassuring while discussing all the ways a person could die on an operating table. Infection, bleeding, blood clots, reaction to anesthesia, he recited. In rare cases, kidney failure, heart attack, stroke. The mortality rate is less than 1%, but I'm required to inform you. I understand, Elena said, cutting him off. She'd heard this speech before, had signed forms acknowledging every possible complication. At this point, she just wanted to get it over with. The recipient will be in the operating room next door, Dr. Patel continued. Both surgeries will happen simultaneously. If everything goes well, you should both be in recovery by noon. Elena nodded, trying not to think about the little girl in the next room who was probably just as scared as she was. Trying not to think about Maya waking up and asking Mrs. Chun when Mommy was coming home. As they wheeled her toward the operating room, Elena caught a glimpse through a partially open door. A man was standing next to a small hospital bed, holding the hand of a little girl with dark hair and enormous eyes. The man's back was to Elena, but something about the way he stood, the rigid set of his shoulders, the expensive cut of his suit seemed familiar. Then the door closed, and Elena was being wheeled into a room full of bright lights and surgical equipment that looked like something from a science fiction movie. Count backward from 10. The anesthesiologist said, placing a mask over Elena's face. 10, Elena whispered. 9, 8. She was thinking about Maya's smile when the darkness took her. In the operating room next door, Marcus held Sophia's hand until the last possible moment, until the nurses gently but firmly asked him to step back so they could begin. His daughter looked impossibly small on the operating table, surrounded by machines and monitors and people in scrubs who held her life in their hands. I love you, sweetheart, he whispered as the anesthesia mask covered her face. Love you too, Daddy, Sophia mumbled, her words already slurring as the medication took effect. Marcus watched until her eyes closed, until her hand went limp in his, until the doctors began the careful, precise work of removing his daughter's diseased kidney and preparing her body to receive the gift that would save her life. The waiting room was a special kind of hell. Marcus had been in high-stakes negotiations that lasted 18 hours, had closed deals worth hundreds of millions of dollars, had faced down corporate raiders and hostile takeovers without breaking a sweat. But sitting in that sterile room, drinking bad coffee from a paper cup and watching the clock tick away the minutes of his daughter's life, was the hardest thing he'd ever done. James had offered to wait with him, as had several other friends and colleagues, but Marcus had sent them all away. This was something he needed to face alone, the possibility that everything he'd worked for, everything he'd built, everything he'd achieved meant nothing if he couldn't save the one person who mattered most. At 11:47 a.m., Dr. Martinez appeared in the waiting room doorway. Marcus stood up so quickly he knocked over his coffee cup, sending lukewarm liquid splashing across the table. How is she? He asked, his voice barely recognizing his own voice. Dr. Martinez smiled, the kind of smile that could light up the entire world. Perfect. The surgery went perfectly. Both surgeries, actually. The kidney is already functioning beautifully, and Sophia is stable in recovery. Marcus felt his knees give out, and he had to sit down hard in the plastic chair behind him. She's okay. She's really okay. She's going to be fine, Mr. Serling. Better than fine. With proper care and medication, she should be able to live a completely normal life. Marcus put his head in his hands and wept. Right there in the hospital waiting room, in front of nurses and other families and anyone who cared to look. Marcus Sterling, the man who'd built a corporate empire, who'd never shown weakness in front of anyone, broke down and cried like a child. When he finally composed himself, Dr. Martinez was still there, waiting patiently with a box of tissues. "The donor," Marcus said, wiping his eyes. "How is she?" "Also stable. The surgery went very smoothly for both patients." "I want to meet her." The words came out before Marcus could think about them. "I want to thank her personally." Dr. Martinez hesitated. "Mr. Sterling, I told you before that hospital policy. I don't care about hospital policy." Marcus stood up, and something in his voice made Dr. Martinez take a step back. "That woman just saved my daughter's life. The least I can do is look her in the eye and say thank you." "I'll have to check with the donor, see if she's willing to meet, please," Marcus said, and the word came out rougher than he intended. "Please just ask her." Elena woke up feeling like she'd been hit by a truck. Every part of her body ached, and there was a sharp burning pain in her side where the surgeons had made their incisions. But she was alive, and according to the nurse, who was checking her vitals, the surgery had been a complete success. "The little girl?" Elena asked, her voice hoarse from the breathing tube. "Doing beautifully," the nurse said with a smile. "Her new kidney is working perfectly." Elena closed her eyes and felt something that might have been peace settle over her. She'd done it. She'd actually done it. Somewhere in this hospital, a 7-year-old girl was going to grow up, go to school, fall in love, have children of her own, all because Elena had been willing to give up something she could live without. "There's something else," the nurse said carefully. "The recipient's father would like to meet you, if you're willing. I told him I'd ask, but there's no pressure. You can absolutely say no." Elena thought about it. Part of her was curious about the little girl's family, wondered what kind of people they were, whether they understood what a miracle they'd been given. But another part of her, the part that remembered being looked down on and dismissed and treated like she didn't matter, wasn't sure she wanted to face that kind of judgment while she was flat on her back in a hospital bed. "What's his name?" she asked. "Sterling, Marcus Sterling." The name hit Elena like a physical blow. Marcus Sterling. The man who'd called security on her, who'd made her feel smaller than dirt, who'd looked at her like she was something unpleasant. He'd scraped off his shoe, the man whose daughter she'd just saved. "Oh," Elena whispered, the full irony of the situation crashing over her like a wave. "Oh no, the tension is building." If you're enjoying this story, hit that like button and let me know in the comments which character you're rooting for. Your support helps me create more incredible stories like this one. Elena stared at the ceiling tiles and tried to process what the nurse had just told her. Marcus Sterling, the arrogant man who'd humiliated her over a broken coffee cup, was the father of the little girl she'd just saved. The universe, it seemed, had a twisted sense of humor. "I need to think about it," Elena said finally. The nurse nodded. "Of course, I'll tell him you need some time." After the nurse left, Elena closed her eyes and tried to imagine how that conversation would go. Would Marcus even remember her? Would he connect the janitor who'd spilled coffee on his shoes with the woman who'd donated a kidney to his daughter? Or would he look right through her, the same way he had that day in the corridor? Part of her wanted to refuse the meeting entirely. She'd done what she came to do. She'd saved a child's life, and that was enough. She didn't need recognition or gratitude from a man who clearly thought she was beneath his notice. But another part of her, the part that had been raised by a mother who believed in doing the right thing even when it was hard, knew she couldn't hide from this. If Marcus Sterling wanted to thank her, the least she could do was listen. 20 minutes later, there was a soft knock on her door. Elena looked up to see Marcus standing in the doorway, looking nothing like the confident, arrogant man she remembered. His expensive suit was wrinkled, his hair was disheveled, and there were dark circles under his eyes that spoke of sleepless nights and desperate worry. But it was definitely him. The same sharp jawline, the same cold blue eyes, the same presence that seemed to fill whatever room he was in. Elena felt her stomach clench with nervous energy. Marcus stepped into the room, and Elena watched his face carefully, waiting for the moment of recognition, waiting for him to remember where he'd seen her before. It didn't come. "Ms. Vasquez," he said, his voice softer than Elena remembered. "I'm Marcus Sterling." He didn't remember her. After humiliating her, after making her feel worthless, after threatening her job, he'd forgotten her completely. Elena supposed she shouldn't have been surprised. She was probably just one of dozens of service workers he'd dismissed and forgotten over the years. "I know who you are," Elena said quietly. Marcus moved closer to her bed, and Elena could see the exhaustion in his face, the relief mixed with gratitude and something else she couldn't quite identify. "I don't know how to thank you," he said, his voice breaking slightly. "What you've done, what you've given us, there aren't words for it." Elena studied his face, looking for any sign that this was performance, that his gratitude was anything less than genuine. But all she saw was a father who'd come close to losing his child and couldn't quite believe he'd been given a reprieve. "How is she?" Elena asked. "Your daughter? Perfect." Marcus's face transformed when he talked about Sophia, the hard edges softening into something almost vulnerable. "The doctors say the kidney is functioning beautifully. She's going to be okay. She's going to live a normal life." "I'm glad," Elena said, and meant it. Marcus pulled a chair closer to her bed and sat down heavily. "Can I ask ... why did you do it? You don't even know us." Elena had been prepared for this question, but she still struggled to find the right words. How could she explain that sometimes people did good things just because they were good? That not everything in the world was a transaction. "I have a daughter too," she said finally. "She's 8. If she needed help, I'd hope someone would be there for her." Marcus nodded slowly, and Elena saw something flicker across his face that might have been shameful. "I want to do something for you," he said, "to show our gratitude. I could set up a fund for your daughter's education, or help you buy a house, or—" "No." The word came out sharper than Elena intended. "Thank you, but no." Marcus looked confused. "I don't understand. Surely there's something—" "I didn't do this for money," Elena said, and now she could hear the edge in her own voice. "I did it because a little girl needed help. I know that, but do you?" Elena struggled to sit up straighter, ignoring the pain in her side. "Do you really know that? Or do you think everyone has a price?" Something in her tone must have gotten through to Marcus, because he leaned back in his chair and really looked at her for the first time. Elena held her breath, waiting for recognition to dawn, waiting for him to remember the coffee cup and the humiliation and the way he'd treated her like she was nothing. But it still didn't come. "I'm sorry," Marcus said carefully. "I didn't mean to offend you. I just ... In my experience, people usually want something in return for their generosity." "Well, your experience doesn't include people like me," Elena said. "Some of us do things because they're right, not because we're expecting a reward." Marcus was quiet for a long moment, studying her face with an intensity that made Elena uncomfortable. She could see him trying to figure her out, trying to understand what kind of person would undergo major surgery for a stranger's child and then refuse compensation. "You're remarkable," he said finally, and there was something in his voice that Elena couldn't quite identify. "Truly remarkable." Elena felt heat rise in her cheeks and had to look away. She wasn't used to compliments, especially not from men like Marcus Sterling. Men who lived in a different world, who spoke in boardrooms and wore suits that cost more than she made in 6 months. "I'm just a mother," she said. Any mother would have done the same thing. "No," Marcus said firmly. "They wouldn't have. What you did, the sacrifice you made, it's extraordinary." Elena met his eyes again, and for a moment, something passed between them. Something that felt almost like understanding, like recognition of some fundamental truth about courage and sacrifice and love. Then Maya's voice echoed from the doorway, breaking the spell. "Mommy!" Elena turned to see her 8-year-old daughter rushing into the room, Mrs. Chun trailing behind with an apologetic expression. Maya launched herself at Elena's bed, careful not to jar the 4 lines but desperate to be close to her mother. "I was so scared," Maya whispered, burying her face in Elena's shoulder. "Mrs. Chun said you were helping another little girl, but I was scared you wouldn't come home." Elena wrapped her arms around her daughter, breathing in the familiar smell of Maya's strawberry shampoo and feeling her heart swell with love so intense it was almost painful. "I'm okay, baby," she whispered. "I'm right here." Marcus watched this reunion with something that felt like a punch to the gut. The love between Elena and her daughter was so pure, so uncomplicated, that it made him think of his own relationship with Sophia and how complicated he'd let it become with custody. Battles and missed visits and work always taking precedence over what really mattered. "Maya, this is Mr. Sterling," Elena said, smoothing her daughter's dark hair. "His little girl is the one I helped." Maya looked up at Marcus with curious brown eyes that were almost identical to her mother's. "Is your daughter going to be okay?" Now Marcus felt his throat tighten. "Yes, she is. Thanks to your mom." "My mom is the bravest person in the whole world," Maya said matter-of-factly. "She always helps people, even when she's scared." Marcus looked at Elena over Maya's head and saw her cheeks flush with embarrassment at her daughter's praise. But there was pride there too, the kind of quiet pride that came from knowing you'd raised a child who understood what really mattered. "Your mom is a hero," Marcus said, and meant it more than he'd ever meant anything in his life. After Maya and Mrs. Chun left, promising to visit again the next day, Marcus lingered in Elena's room. He knew he should go check on Sophia and should start making the calls to update friends and family about the successful surgery. But something kept him rooted to the chair beside Elena's bed. "Your daughter is beautiful," he said. "Thank you." Elena's voice was soft with exhaustion and medication, but there was warmth there too. "She's my whole world." "I can see that." Marcus thought about his own daughter, probably waking up from anesthesia right now, probably asking for him. "I should go check on Sophia, of course," Elena said. "Give her my love. Tell her she's going to do amazing things with her life." Marcus stood up, but hesitated at the door. "Elena, can I call you Elena?" She nodded. "Double quotes, thank you," he said simply. "For everything." As Marcus walked down the hall toward Sophia's room, he found himself thinking about Elena Vasquez in ways that had nothing to do with gratitude. There was something about her, a strength, a dignity, a fundamental goodness that he'd never encountered before. She'd literally given part of herself to save his daughter, had asked for nothing in return, and had somehow made him feel like she was the one doing him a favor by accepting his thanks. In Marcus's world, people were motivated by money, power, status, and revenge. But Elena seemed to operate by completely different rules, rules that Marcus was only beginning to understand, rules that made him question everything he thought he knew about human nature. And about himself. 3 days later, Elena was preparing to be discharged when Marcus appeared in her doorway again. This time, he wasn't alone. He was carrying a little girl with enormous dark eyes and a shy smile. "Elena," Marcus said, his voice gentle, "I'd like you to meet Sophia." Elena's breath caught in her throat. This was the child she'd saved. Reason she had a surgical scar and would be on medication for the rest of her life. Sophia looked impossibly small in her father's arms, but her eyes were bright and alert, no longer clouded with the exhaustion of organ failure. "Hi," Sophia said shyly, then looked up at her father. "Daddy, is this the angel lady you told me about?" Elena felt tears prick her eyes. "I'm not an angel, sweetheart. I'm just Elena. Daddy says you gave me part of yourself so I could get better." Sophia continued, her child's directness cutting straight to the heart of things. "That's what angels do." Marcus sat down in the chair beside Elena's bed, settling Sophia on his lap. Elena could see the careful way he held her, as if she were made of spun glass and might break at any moment. "How are you feeling?" Elena asked. "Sophia, much better," Sophia said, then lowered her voice conspiratorially. "The doctors say I can go home tomorrow, and that I can play soccer again when I get stronger." "That's wonderful," Elena said, meaning it. This was why she'd done it, for moments like this, for the chance to see a child's eyes light up when talking about her future. "I drew you something," Sophia said, pulling a folded piece of paper from her pocket. "Daddy helped me with the hard parts." Elena unfolded the drawing to find a crayon masterpiece depicting two stick figures holding hands under a rainbow. One figure had long black hair and was labeled Elena the Angel. The other had shorter hair and was labeled Sophia. "It's beautiful," Elena whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "I'll treasure it always." Marcus watched this exchange with something that felt like awe. His 7-year-old daughter had better instincts about people than he did, she'd recognized Elena's essential goodness immediately, without needing explanations or context, or any of the complicated analysis that Marcus usually applied to human relationships. "Sophia," Marcus said gently, "Elena needs to rest now. We should let her." "Actually," Elena interrupted, "I'm being discharged this afternoon, going home to my own daughter." "Maya," Sophia said, her face lighting up. "Daddy told me about Maya. Can she come play with me sometime? When will I'm all better?" Elena looked at Marcus, unsure how to respond. The idea of their daughters being friends, of Elena and Marcus being thrown together through playdates and birthday parties, seemed both wonderful and terrifying. Marcus seemed to understand her hesitation. "We'd love to have Maya over," he said, carefully, "when you're both feeling up to it." But as he spoke, something was nagging at the back of Marcus's mind. Something about Elena's voice, about the way she held herself, about the flash of wariness he'd seen in her eyes when he'd first walked into her room. He knew her from somewhere, not just from the hospital, but from before. The realization hit him like a physical blow. The coffee cup, the corridor, the woman in scrubs who'd been cleaning up broken porcelain with bleeding fingers while he'd stood over her like some kind of tyrant. Elena saw the exact moment when recognition dawned on Marcus's face, saw his expression change from warm gratitude to something that looked almost like horror. "Oh God," he whispered, his face going pale. The clumsy janitor spilled coffee on your expensive shoes," Elena finished quietly. "Yes," Sophia looked back and forth between the adults, sensing the sudden tension but not understanding it. "What's wrong, Daddy?" Marcus couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. The woman who'd just saved his daughter's life, the woman he'd been thinking about for days, the woman whose goodness and strength had challenged everything he thought he knew about. The world was the same woman he'd humiliated and threatened over a broken cup, the same woman whose job he'd nearly cost her, the same woman he'd looked at like she was beneath his notice, the same woman who'd given part of herself to save his child, even knowing exactly who he was and how he'd treated her. "Elena," he started, his voice rough with shame and something that might have been panic. I have to explain." "You don't need to explain anything," Elena said, her voice steady despite the pain in her eyes. "I know exactly who you are, Marcus Sterling. I've always known." "Then why?" The question came out broken, desperate. "Why did you do it? After what I said, how I treated you, why would you save my daughter?" Elena looked down at Sophia, who was watching this conversation with the serious expression that children got when they sensed the adults around them were discussing something important and complicated. "Because she's innocent," Elena said simply. "Because a child's life is worth more than her father's mistakes." Marcus felt something crack open in his chest, something he'd been keeping locked away for so long he'd forgotten it was there. Shame, regret, and something else. something that felt dangerously close to love. "I was wrong," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "What I said to you, how I acted, I was completely, inexcusably wrong." "Yes," Elena said quietly. "You were." "I'm sorry," Marcus continued, and Elena could hear that he meant it with every fiber of his being. "I'm so sorry, Elena. You deserved better. You deserved respect and kindness, and I gave you cruelty instead." Sophia had been listening to this exchange with growing confusion, but now she tugged on her father's sleeve. "Daddy, what did you do to Elena?" Marcus looked down at his daughter, his beautiful, innocent daughter who was alive because of Elena's sacrifice, and felt shame wash over him in waves. "I was mean to her," he said simply, because that was the truth in its most basic form. "I was very mean to someone who didn't deserve it." Sophia's face scrunched up with the kind of moral indignation that only children could manage. "That's not nice, Daddy. You should say sorry." "I did say sorry," Marcus said. "But sometimes sorry isn't enough." Elena watched this exchange and felt her anger beginning to soften despite herself. She could see the genuine remorse in Marcus's eyes, could hear the self-recrimination in his voice. And more than that, she could see how much he loved his daughter. How her near death had stripped away all his defenses and left him raw and vulnerable. "Sophia," Elena said gently, "would you like to meet my daughter? She's waiting outside with Mrs. Chun." Sophia nodded eagerly, and Elena pressed the call button for the nurse. A few minutes later, Maya appeared in the doorway, her face lighting up when she saw Elena sitting up and looking stronger. "Mommy, are you ready to come home? Almost, baby." "Maya, this is Sophia, the little girl I told you about." Maya approached the bed with the kind of careful curiosity that 8-year-olds showed around younger children. "Hi, Sophia. Are you feeling better now?" "Much better," Sophia said. "Your mom is a hero," Maya beamed with pride. "I know. She's the best mom in the whole world." Marcus watched his daughter and Elena's daughter size each other up with the swift evaluation that children use to determine whether someone would make a good friend. Within minutes, they were chattering about favorite colors and school subjects, and whether Disney princesses or superheroes were better. "They're going to be friends," Elena observed, and there was something in her voice that Marcus couldn't quite read. "I hope so," Marcus said, then looked at Elena directly. "I hope we can be friends too, someday, when you can forgive me for being an ass." Elena studied his face for a long moment. "You hurt me," she said finally. "You made me feel small and worthless, and I didn't deserve that." "No," Marcus agreed, "you didn't. But you're Sophia's father," Elena continued. "And she's a beautiful, loving little girl who's going to need people in her life who care about her. People who understand what a miracle it is that she's alive." Marcus felt hope flicker in his chest. "Does that mean it means I'm willing to try?" Elena said. "For the girl's sake, if nothing else." The nurse arrived then to help Elena with her discharge paperwork, and Marcus knew it was time to leave. But as he stood up, carrying Sophia in his arms, he couldn't help but feel like something fundamental had shifted between them. "Elena," he said, pausing at the door, "thank you for everything. For saving Sophia, for giving me a chance I don't deserve, for being the kind of person who does the right thing, even when it's hard." Elena met his eyes, and for a moment, Marcus saw something there that made his heart race. Not forgiveness exactly, but possibility. "Take care of her," Elena said, nodding toward Sophia. "She's special." "I know," Marcus said. "I'm finally beginning to understand just how special." As Marcus carried Sophia down the hospital corridor, his daughter excited excitedly about her new friend Maya and when they could have a play date. And whether Elena would come to her birthday party next month. Marcus listened to his daughter's happy voice and felt something he hadn't experienced in years. Hope. Not just for Sophia's health, though that was miracle enough, but for the possibility that he might be able to become the kind of man who deserved the sacrifice Elena had made. The kind of man who deserved a woman like Elena Vasquez. But first, he had a lot of work to do on himself. A lot of apologies to make and bridges to build and walls to tear down. Starting with the coffee cup. 2 weeks later, Elena was back at work, moving more slowly than usual but determined to return to normal. The surgical scar was healing well. And while she tired more easily than before, the doctors had assured her that she would make a full recovery. She was mopping the floor in the cardiac wing when she heard her name being called. Elena looked up to see Marcus walking toward her, but something was different about him. He wasn't wearing one of his expensive suits. Instead, he had on jeans and a simple blue button-down shirt that made his eyes look less cold and more human. "Elena," he said, stopping a few feet away. "How are you feeling?" "Better every day," she said, leaning on her mop handle. "How's Sophia?" "Incredible." The doctors are amazed at how well she's responding. Her energy levels are through the roof, and she's been asking about Maya constantly. Elena smiled. "Maya's been asking about her too." Marcus shifted nervously, and Elena realized he was holding something behind his back. "I have something for you," he said, bringing his hands around to reveal a simple white coffee cup. Not the expensive porcelain one she'd broken. This was clearly from the hospital cafeteria, the kind of plain ceramic mug that cost $3 and could be replaced without a second thought. Elena stared at the cup, not understanding. "It's not about the money," Marcus said quietly. "It was never about the money. It was about me being angry at the world and taking it out on someone who didn't deserve it. Someone who was just trying to do her job and help people." He held the cup out to her. "I can't undo what I said or how I made you feel, but I can make sure it never happens again. To you or anyone else." Elena took the cup, her fingers brushing against his for just a moment. "Marcus, I've been doing some thinking," he continued, the words coming out in a rush, "about the kind of person I want to be. The kind of father I want to be for Sophia. And I realize that if I want her to grow up to be like you, kind and generous and brave, then I need to start setting a better example." Elena felt her heart do something complicated in her chest. "What does that mean?" "It means I want to change. Not just say I'm sorry, but actually be better. I want to earn the right to be in your life, Elena. In both your lives." Before Elena could respond, Sophia's voice echoed down the hallway. "Daddy, Elena, Maya." They turned to see Sophia running toward them, actually running, her face flushed with excitement and health. Behind her, Maya was trying to keep up, both girls giggling as they raced down the corridor. "Girls, no running in the hospital," Marcus said automatically, but his voice was full of joy rather than real reproach. Sophia skidded to a stop in front of Elena and threw her arms around her waist, careful to avoid the area where Elena's surgical scar was still healing. "I missed you," Sophia said, her voice muffled against Elena's scrubs. "I missed you too, sweetheart," Elena said, smoothing Sophia's hair. "You look wonderful." "I feel wonderful," Sophia said, pulling back to beam at Elena. "And guess what? Daddy said Maya can come to my birthday party next week." Elena looked at Marcus over Sophia's head. "Did he?" "If it's okay with you," Marcus said carefully. "It's going to be a small party, just family and a few close friends, nothing fancy." Elena could see that he was trying to make it easy for her to say yes, trying not to make her feel like she'd be out of place in his world of wealth and privilege. "Maya would love that," Elena said. "Wouldn't you, baby?" Maya nodded enthusiastically. "Can we get Sophia a present? A really good one?" "Of course we can," Elena said, then looked at Marcus. "What does she like?" "Books," Marcus said immediately. "She's obsessed with stories about brave princesses and dragons and adventures." "I know just the thing," Elena said, thinking of the bookstore near Their apartment that sold used books at prices she could actually afford. As they talked about party details and gift ideas, Elena found herself studying Marcus's face. The hard edges were still there, but they seemed softer somehow, as if the experience of nearly losing Sophia had worn away some of his protective armor. "Elena," Marcus said when the girls had wandered a few feet away to examine the pictures on the hospital walls, "would you like to have dinner sometime? Just the two of us, I mean, to talk." Elena felt heat rise in her cheeks. "Marcus, I don't think, not a date," he said quickly. "I know I don't have the right to ask for that. Just dinner, as friends. Or as two people who care about each other's children." Elena looked at him for a long moment, weighing her options. Part of her wanted to say no, to keep things simple and uncomplicated. But another part of her, the part that had seen genuine remorse in his eyes, that had watched him transform from an arrogant businessman into a father desperate to save his child, was curious about who Marcus Sterling might be when he wasn't hiding behind walls of wealth and defensiveness. "Okay," she said finally, "dinner, as friends." Marcus's face lit up with a smile that transformed his entire appearance. "Really?" "Really, but somewhere casual," Elena added quickly. "I don't own anything fancy enough for the places you probably go to." "I know a great diner downtown," Marcus said. "Best pie in the city, and you can wear whatever you want." Elena laughed, and the sound made Marcus feel like he'd just won the lottery. Sophia's birthday party was exactly what Marcus had promised: small, intimate, and focused entirely on making this 7-year-old girl happy. Elena and Maya arrived to find the backyard of Marcus's house decorated with fairy lights and pink balloons, with a table laden with homemade treats and a chocolate cake shaped like a castle. "It's beautiful," Elena said, looking around at the decorations that were clearly the work of someone who'd put thought and love into every detail. "Sophia helped plan everything," Marcus said, and Elena could hear the pride in his voice. She wanted it to be perfect for Maya's first visit. Maya was already racing around the backyard with Sophia, the two girls chattering excitedly about the treasure hunt Marcus had organized and the craft station set up under the oak tree. Elena watched them play and felt her heart swell with happiness at seeing her daughter so carefree and joyful. "They're good together," Marcus observed, following her gaze. "They are," Elena agreed. "Maya doesn't have many friends. We move around a lot, and it's hard for her to get settled before we have to go somewhere else." Marcus looked at her with curiosity. "Why do you move so much?" Elena shrugged, suddenly self-conscious. "Cheaper rent, better job opportunities, landlords who decide they want to renovate. The usual reasons when you're barely making ends meet." "What if you didn't have to move?" Marcus asked quietly. "What if you could stay in one place long enough for Maya to really put down roots?" Elena looked at him sharply. "Marcus, if you're offering to—" "I'm not offering anything," he said quickly. "I'm just asking a hypothetical question. If money wasn't a factor, where would you want to live?" Elena considered this. "Somewhere with good schools for Maya, a safe neighborhood where she could walk to the library or the park without me worrying. Maybe a place with a little garden where she could learn to grow things." "That sounds perfect," Marcus said, and something in his voice made Elena look at him more closely. "What are you thinking?" she asked suspiciously. "I'm thinking that I own a lot of real estate in this city," Marcus said carefully. "And that some of it is sitting empty while I figure out what to do with it. And that maybe, if you were interested, we could work out some kind of arrangement that would benefit everyone." Elena felt her walls go up immediately. "I told you before, I don't want your charity." "It's not charity," Marcus said firmly. "It's friendship. It's two people who care about each other's children, figuring out how to make sure those children get the best possible start in life." Before Elena could respond, Sophia came running over with Maya in tow. "Elena, Maya, come see what Daddy made for us." The girls dragged Elena and Marcus over to the oak tree, where Marcus had built an elaborate fairy house complete with tiny furniture and working lights. "It's for the garden fairies," Sophia explained seriously. "Daddy says if we take good care of it, they might come live here and grant wishes." "What would you wish for?" Elena asked, kneeling down to examine the intricate details of the fairy house. Sophia thought about this with the gravity that children brought to important questions. "I'd wish for Maya to live close enough that we could have sleepovers," she said finally, "and for you and Daddy to be happy." Elena felt tears prick her eyes at the simple honesty of Sophia's wish. She looked up at Marcus and saw that he was watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. "What about you, Maya?" Marcus asked. "What would you wish for?" Maya bit her lip, considering. "I'd wish for Mommy to not have to work so hard all the time," she said, "and for us to have a home that nobody can make us leave." Elena's heart broke a little at her daughter's words. She'd tried so hard to shield Maya from their financial struggles, but children saw everything, understood, more than adults gave them credit for. "Those are good wishes," Marcus said gently. "Very good wishes." The party continued with games and cake and the kind of laughter that only children could produce. Elena found herself relaxing in spite of her reservations, watching Maya blossom in the warm atmosphere of acceptance and joy. As the afternoon wound down and the other guests began to leave, Marcus pulled Elena aside. "I have something for you," he said, pulling an envelope from his pocket. Elena looked at it suspiciously. "What is it?" "Open it," Marcus said. Inside the envelope was a key and an address Elena didn't recognize. "Marcus, what is this?" "It's the key to a house," he said simply. "A small house about 10 minutes from here, with 3 bedrooms and a garden and a school district that Maya would love." Elena stared at the key as if it might bite her. "I can't accept this." "You're not accepting anything," Marcus said patiently. "You're doing me a favor. The house has been sitting empty for months, and it needs someone to live in it, to take care of it, to make it a home again. Marcus, the rent is whatever you're paying now," he continued. "And in exchange you'd be doing me the favor of letting Sophia have her best friend close by. Let me have the chance to prove that I can be the kind of man who deserves your friendship." Elena looked at the key in her palm, then at Maya and Sophia, who were giggling together on the swing set Marcus had installed in the backyard. "This is too much," she whispered. "It's not enough," Marcus said quietly. "It's not nearly enough to repay what you've given me, but it's a start." Elena closed her eyes and tried to think rationally about this offer. Every practical instinct she had was screaming at her to be suspicious, to look for the catch, to protect herself and Maya from disappointment. But when she opened her eyes and saw Marcus watching her with hope and vulnerability written across his face, she realized that maybe, just maybe, she was ready to take a leap of faith. "Okay," she said softly. "Okay, we'll try it. But as friends, Marcus, whatever this is between us, we take it slow." Marcus's face lit up with joy. "Friends," he agreed. "For now." As Elena and Maya drove home that evening, Maya chattered excitedly about the party and her new best friend and the possibility of living close enough to see Sophia every day. "Mommy," Maya said as they pulled into their apartment complex, "do you think Mr. Marcus likes you?" Elena glanced at her daughter in the rearview mirror. "What makes you ask that?" "He looks at you the way Prince Eric looks at Ariel in the movie," Maya said matter-of-factly. "Like you're the most beautiful thing he's ever seen." Elena felt heat rise in her cheeks. "I think you have a very active imagination, baby." "Maybe," Maya said, "but I think he's nice. And I think he makes you smile more than you used to." That night, after Maya had fallen asleep, Elena sat at their tiny kitchen table and looked at the key Marcus had given her. Part of her was terrified of depending on someone who might change his mind, terrified of letting Maya get attached to a life they might have to leave, terrified of opening her heart to a man who had already hurt her once. but another. Part of her, the part that had donated a kidney to save a stranger's child, was ready to believe in second chances, ready to believe that sometimes people really could change, ready to believe that love might be worth the risk after all. 6 months later, Elena was planting tomatoes in the garden behind the little house that had become home when she heard the front door open and Maya's excited voice calling her name. "Mommy, Sophia's here, and Mr. Marcus brought ice cream." Elena wiped her hands on her gardening gloves and turned to see Marcus walking through the back gate, carrying a bag from the ice cream shop downtown and smiling at her with the kind of warmth that still made her heart skip a beat. "How was your day?" he asked, leaning down to kiss her cheek, a gesture that had become natural over the months of friendship that had slowly, carefully, inevitably blossomed into something deeper. "Perfect," Elena said, and meant it. Maya got an A on her science project. The tomatoes are coming in beautifully, and Mrs. Patterson next door brought over fresh cookies. "And now we have ice cream," Marcus said, his eyes twinkling, "which officially makes this the best day ever." They sat on the back porch and watched the girls play in the garden while they ate ice cream and talked about their days. Marcus told Elena about the new community health clinic his company was funding, a project inspired, he admitted, by everything she'd taught him about what really mattered in life. Elena told him about her new job at the hospital, not as a janitor anymore, but as a patient advocate, helping families navigate the complex world of medical care and insurance. It was work that felt meaningful, work that used her natural empathy and her hard-won understanding of what it meant to be powerless in the face of a medical crisis. "I have something for you," Marcus said suddenly, pulling a small velvet box from his pocket. Elena's heart stopped. "Marcus, it's not what you think," he said quickly, though his eyes were twinkling with mischief. "Open it." Inside the box was a small silver necklace with a pendant shaped like a kidney. Elena started laughing, really laughing, the kind of full-body laughter that came from pure joy and absurdity and love all mixed together. "It's terrible," she gasped, between giggles. "It's the most ridiculous piece of jewelry I've ever seen." "I know," Marcus said, grinning, "but I saw it in a medical supply catalog and I couldn't resist. It seemed like the perfect reminder of how we found each other." Elena let him fasten the necklace around her neck, his fingers gentle against her skin. "I love it," she said, meaning it completely. "It's perfect." "Elena," Marcus said, his voice suddenly serious, "I need to tell you something." She looked at him, seeing the nervousness in his expression. "I love you," he said simply. "I love your strength and your kindness and the way you make everything better just by being part of it. I love watching you with Maya, love seeing how happy Sophia is when you're around. I love the way you challenge me to be better, and the way you forgive me when I fall short." Elena felt tears gathering in her eyes. "Marcus, I know we said we'd take things slow," he continued, "and I don't want to rush you into anything you're not ready for, but I needed you to know how I feel. I needed you to know that our life together, it's everything I never knew I wanted." Elena reached for his hands, twining their fingers together. "I love you too," she said quietly. "I love the man you've become, the father you are to Sophia, the way you've made Maya feel like she's your own daughter too." "She is my own daughter," Marcus said firmly. "You both are my family, Helena, the family I want to spend the rest of my life with." From the garden came the sound of Maya and Sophia's laughter, the two girls chasing fireflies in the gathering dusk. Elena looked at Marcus, this man who had started as her daughter's salvation and became her own, and felt her heart overflow with gratitude for all the unexpected ways that love could find you. "Ask me again in a year," she said softly. "When Maya's settled in her new school, Sophia's had time to adjust to all the changes. Ask me when we've had time to build something strong enough to last forever." Marcus brought her hands to his lips and kissed her knuckles. "I'll ask you every day for the rest of my life if that's what it takes." Elena smiled, thinking of the journey that had brought them here. From a broken coffee cup and cruel words to a love that had grown from sacrifice and forgiveness, and the simple truth that sometimes the best things in life came from the most unexpected places. "I think," she said, "1 year will be enough." As the sun set over their little house with its thriving garden and the sound of children's laughter echoing through the evening air, Elena touched the ridiculous kidney necklace at her throat and marveled at the mysterious ways that life could surprise you. She'd given away part of herself to save a stranger's child, never imagining that in return she'd receive a family, a home, and a love deeper than anything she'd ever dreamed possible. Some gifts, she realized, were worth infinitely more than what you sacrificed to give them. Some gifts changed everything. The grand opening of the Elena Vasquez Community Health Center was everything Marcus had dreamed it would be. The state-of-the-art facility, funded by Sterling Enterprises but named after the woman who had taught him what true generosity meant, buzzed with excitement as families toured the pediatric wing and met the doctors who would serve their community. "Mommy, look," Maya called out, now 13 and radiant with confidence. She was standing next to a bronze plaque that read, "Dedicated to those who give without expecting anything in return." Elena, her hand resting on her rounded belly where their third child grew, smiled at the inscription. Beside her, Marcus held 12-year-old Sophia's hand while she cut the ribbon with ceremonial scissors, her face glowing with health and pride. "I can't believe you named a whole medical center after me," Elena murmured to her husband, still amazed by the turn their lives had taken. "I can't believe you're still surprised when I tell you how extraordinary you are," Marcus replied, kissing her temple. "Mrs. Sterling." The name still made Elena's heart flutter. 2 years of marriage, and she still sometimes woke up amazed that this was her life, that love could bloom from such unexpected soil. "Daddy, when the baby comes, will you build another fairy house?" Sophia asked, tugging on Marcus's sleeve. "Of course, sweetheart, the biggest fairy house in the world." As the crowd dispersed and the sun set over the medical center that would serve thousands of families, Elena touched the kidney necklace she still wore every day. From a broken coffee cup to this moment, from strangers to soulmates, their journey proved that sometimes the most beautiful love stories began with the worst first impressions. After all, the best gifts often came disguised as the worst days. And sometimes, saving someone else's life was really just the beginning of saving your own. Wow! What an incredible journey from heartbreak to healing. Did this story give you all the feels? I'd love to hear which moment touched your heart the most. Drop a comment below and let me know. If you're craving more amazing stories like this one, smash that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you never miss our latest heart-pounding tales. Your support means the world to me and helps me create even more incredible stories for you. What kind of story should I tell next? A billionaire romance? A family revenge saga? A small-town mystery? Tell me in the comments. I read every single one and love bringing your ideas to life. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up if Elena and Marcus's love story made you believe in second chances. Share it with someone who needs to hear that kindness always wins in the end. See you in the next story.